Well, I'm not very far in the woods today. In fact, I've really just stepped off the sidewalk. I'm sure you can hear the vehicles rolling by over there. But my purpose of coming here right now is just to explain to you about a video that I'm going to shoot pretty quick here today. And the purpose of this video that I'm going to shoot is dealing with a large game animal in like a survival situation or a scenario where you're all by yourself. The reason I'm doing this is because a few years back I did shoot a moose, and it was large, and what happened is it slid down a hill and it wedged against a couple of trees, and its back legs were kind of forced up onto the top part of the moose, and there was no way that I could go about skinning it and quartering it in the conventional way, so I had to figure something else out. And since then I've got a lot more experience and gained a lot more knowledge, so I've always kind of had that in the back of my head of how I deal with it now that I know what I'm doing. And I got an opportunity today to show you a few tips that might help if you ever find yourself in a situation like that. I'm sure you probably won't, because most people now when they go hunting, they have ATVs and good gear like chainsaws and all that kind of stuff to make the job easy, but in a survival situation, or if you're just doing what you have to do to feed your family, you might not have those kinds of luxuries. So the first thing I want to say about this process is, if you ever do find yourself in this situation, you kind of have to think outside the box to get the job done. The typical procedure of doing things would be that you bleed your animal out, and then you gut it, and you get the gut pile out of the animal, and then you skin it, and then you quarter it. But if you're in a situation like I was, where the animal's kind of jammed into a tight spot, you might not be able to gut it, and the gut pile would have nowhere to go. So you can actually start working on your animal without gutting it, and save that for later until you can actually maneuver the animal to deal with it. So the first step in that situation would be to actually start skinning your animal out. You may have to lift the leg up and put it up onto your shoulder, or get a forked stick and prop it up and begin skinning it out. And once you get the skin worked off, you can flop it off to the side and use that as a working area, and you can still have the gut pile intact. There's membrane and there's muscle that holds it in place, and that's not going to come out. So that's the way to start working on an animal in a situation like that. And then you need to reduce the weight. Like the moose that I had in that situation, each leg easily outweighed me, so it was heavy and awkward to deal with, and I wound up having to just hack into it and bone it out where it was lying. It wasn't an easy process. So with that said, I'm going to head inside and work with this elk that someone brought me, and I'll show you the next steps that I would take. So here's what we have to work with. We're inside now. Sorry, it's kind of echoing here. Hope the sound's okay. But anyways, this is the hind quarter of a small cow elk that's been brought to me to cut up. So you'll kind of have to use your imagination regarding the scenario that I was talking about with the big moose, but this will do for demonstrating what I want to talk about. So if anyone's not too familiar with what you're looking at here, this is just the back leg, and your hoof end would be off over here, and then the rib cage will be off in this direction up here. So this is the first part that I had to deal with that big moose that gave me problems. So normally in a situation like this, you'd start boning out a leg from the inside underneath here once you had it apart more, and you could just come in here around this seam and start ripping your whole leg off. But that doesn't really reduce any of the weight, and what you'd be doing there, if you haven't done it a bunch of times before, is you're just digging and digging into the meat, hoping to find the socket that's in here somewhere. A better way is to get down to the bone right away. But where's the leg bone, right? The cannon bone. So an easy way to find that is you hit this seam here on the outside. It's always going to be there. And you follow that down to where it joins these other muscles here. Put your hand on that, put your thumb out there, and that You mark that with your knife. Gives you the lines of where you're going to start cutting to get some location of things in this meat here. So I'm going to come around the other side. Just going to get rid of a little bit of this fat here so you can see this better. There is actually a seam between some major muscles here. And if you wanted to, you could take the time to get into that seam and follow it right out, but you're probably not going to want to do that. So what you do is you just loosen it up, get it opened up, remembering where those lines are. You can get your hand right in there, open it up. Up around here is where your kneecap is. So you can start cutting through the meat here now. And then when you come to this line, you're just going to put your knife in there, hit bone, out like that. Now you can get your knife on the bone inside of there and start digging it out here. Kneecap up in there. Work it out. Finish cutting this piece of meat out. It's a little hard to work with right now for me because this is actually frozen. It was in somebody's garage and it's well below freezing out there. Okay, that may have looked a little tricky, but I made it a little more difficult than it had to be because this isn't how I usually do it. So anyways, what you got now is a nice solid muscle piece of meat. Takes a lot of weight off of this thing here. And if you look inside of here now, you got somewhere to start boning. You got a good reference point. And also, if you wanted to take this off here now, what this has done for you is it showed you where your hip socket joint is. It's right up in here. So you've got a good location for that. So you can go ahead, if you want, and work out your socket joint and just take this whole back leg right off. But it's a start. And if this is slippery and slimy out in the woods, and you gotta work with it and take back to your camp and hang it, don't be afraid to do something like that. Right there by the kneecap. And that'll give you a good place to hang on to it and to hang it by out of the reach of the bears or whatever. So, okay, that's gotten it started.